Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from Chatham, New York, this is Wisdom of the Sages, our daily yoga podcast with your host, Raghunath, and co-host and senior educator at the Bhakti Center in New York City, Kaustubha. Welcome to our show. We are at a very crucial point in the Bhagavatam, which is incredibly relevant for the times that we are going through right now. And it starts to tease out this idea, which is sort of like, practically speaking, as far as I'm concerned, and I'm open to other opinions on this because I'm no theologian, but it's like unprecedented in spiritual circles where the great queen prays for calamity. So this is this key part in the Bhagavatam where the great queen Kunti, the mother of Arjuna, prays for calamity. Who would pray for such a thing? What a crazy idea. And the idea is that when there is a reversal, when there is great distress in this world, that's when we become very, very connected. Truthfully, it's when we either become connected or when we break into hysteria, panic, fear, which is sort of what's going on. Hey, by the way, if you're new to the show, welcome. This is our daily yoga podcast where we study sacred literature of India. And this is not just about our up dogs and our down dogs. This is like how we're supposed to be training our mind to think like a yogi and not just keep it in our head during a 200-hour yoga teacher training, but make it a very relevant, practical application for our life in this Kali Yuga or this modern age that we live in. I think it's good. It's safe to say that it's Monday morning and the whole world's a little bit confused. Everybody's a little bit vulnerable. We're supposed to be going to work today. Okay, Sunday, we could sort of get away with it. It was Sunday yesterday, but it's Monday morning and everything's closed. Today, I'm in this yoga studio. There's a slight reverb today because this is our yoga studio. It's not back at the farm and it's empty. We usually have an Ashtanga class coming in here, and we might be broadcasting from here all the time, but we have to shut down the yoga studio, and people are not going to work today. Some people are working incredibly overtime. I don't know if you saw my Instagram post yesterday, Kaustubha.
I didn't.
Oh, you didn't. You're not.
I didn't. Sorry. I don't follow you on Instagram.
Don't follow.
Just kidding.
Anyway, it came up with Thomas Harry Bull, one of our Zoomers. If you're new to by the way, if you're new to the show, welcome. You can reach us all at wisdomofthesages108@gmail.com. We have a Zoom group this morning with about 90 people, 89 people. And you want to get on that, you can watch from your bed. You can watch from your breakfast table, or you can watch from your truck. We got truckers watching the show. They're driving around, doing things, not paying any attention to the road. You're welcome to do that. You can join our Zoom group by writing Mara, again, wisdomofthesages108@gmail. We also have a Patreon account where we're broadcasting more. What we're finding is that everybody's tuning in for the classes that we're doing on Patreon as well. It's like, there's an evening class, a morning class. We could do this all day long. This could be just our life. There's always a need to hear the Bhagavatam. And the evening is very sweet because we read Krishna Leela and it sort of puts you to sleep. It's a different mood than the morning. So Thomas Harry Bull brought up this point by a friend of his who said that, like, one way to reframe this place we're in is that it's like Sabbath. And in Sabbath, it's a day of rest. It's a day where you go inside. It's a day where you're with the people that are intimate with you in your life. You put the hands on those who are intimate with you. You embrace those who are intimate with you. Instead of going out, working, you have the day of rest. And perhaps it's my karma for being such a hustler. And almost like in Kali Yuga, we just got to hustle all the time. You ask anybody what they're doing. I'm busy. And we're stacked. Our brains are stacked. You throw a couple kids in the mix, a pet, a youth soccer league, you're in overwhelm in a matter of moments. So, it's interesting. This has been our theme. There's sort of like no downtime for the mind. Last week we said tinkering. Our parents used to tinker with things, go into the garage. People are always on the hustle. Now the universe has given us a forced rest. There's nothing to do. And so here's my choices. And a lot of you it's very beautiful to witness so many people here this morning, because our choices are freak out. And this hysteria, it's going to cause more damage than the actual virus. That's what I'm convinced. The hysteria will cause much more damage, make people act irrational, make them click right into their lower passions or animal instincts, or we could opt into something higher. And this is what Kunti, the heroine of this book right now, is demonstrating. How can reversals bring us up? Because the fact is, reversals can really bring you down. Reversals, lack can bring out the worst in people. How can reversals bring out the best in people? And I think that's going to be our theme today, and it's very timely. You want to share anything, Kaustubha?
No, I like how you framed it, and I think we're this is like kind of our third day on the topic, because coming from the viewpoint of yoga or Vedanta, one will interpret reversals or suffering as being due to the effects of the law of karma, that due to some previous decisions, a result has developed from it, and we're experiencing that now. And there are implications with that. There are some scary implications that can come from that, but there are some very positive and hopeful implications that can grow out of that as well. And so we began addressing that yesterday. I think we can continue that discussion today, and I'm looking forward to it.
I also want to recap one thing I said yesterday, just because truthfully, when so much of the house of cards is potentially collapsing, it's good to really get focused on what I can worry about, what I'm allowed to worry about, and what things that if I worry about them are just going to make me sick, make me angry, make me frustrated, make me fearful. There are certain things within my circle that I'm allowed to be concerned about, which is what I do with myself, what I do with my spare time, what I do with my mind. You got free time? What are you going to do with it? What are you going to eat today? How are you going to treat people today? How am I going to treat my kids? Am I going to bond with my kids, my wife, my family, with nature? What am I going to do? These are the things I'm responsible for, and these are the how am I going to react to some challenge? How am I going to react to someone else freaking out? So these are the things I'm responsible for, and these are the things I'm allowed to worry about. When is the yoga studio going to open? When the WHO news on the pandemic? There's so many things out there that is beyond my beyond my control. And I'm spending my time so much in that outer loop of what I can't control that it's going to kill me. It's going to wreck my nervous system. It's going to break down my immune system. I'm going to stop worrying about the things that I can't control today. And I'm going to start worrying about these important things. And that's why it's so beautiful to see so many people, 91 people here this morning. You guys have no reason to wake up. There's no work today. Go to bed. Are you crazy? That's what's interesting. It's choosing Krishna in times of great distress. It's actually the goal of the entire Bhagavatam. What everybody's doing today. There's a time of potential great distress. What am I going to choose? And a lot of people are already feeling it. I just want to validate them. Some people have lost their jobs. I'm included. This is my job today. right? But I've lost my job. I had a whole tour through Europe. It was just canceled. That was not just my exciting tour through Europe. That was my income. That was my mortgage. That was my payment for my car. That was payment for my oil for the house and electricity. I had a whole Puerto Rico retreat. It was canceled. Everything was canceled. The next class, this last weekend's classes in the United States, all canceled. The foregoing future, it's been all canceled. What does that look for me? It means a big mystery of the future. So that's, if I can be really frank with everybody, I had, for the first time in my life, a panic attack. I've never had a panic attack. I had a real meltdown. Something kicked into my very being of I call it my body, of my concept of a father, as a husband, as a protector, whatever I've conditioned myself or my body conditioned to be. It kicked in and I broke down, and it was that would happen maybe 2 days ago, and I almost got in like 2 car accidents. I ran red lights. I almost fell. I fell down. I sat paralyzed in my car, and it's quite humiliating to even share this. But it just became a constant what if, and that was my mantra. Instead of Krishna, what would you like from me? Then I was like, well, I'm just going to do the very basics. I'm going to go buy food. And there was no food on the shelf. It was like it was a tough day. So I'm grateful for the Bhagavatam because it's grounding me. I think it's safe to say none of us are above fear and above this type of vulnerability. But the fact is, on a regular basis, we could just choose to go into my inner circle of things I can control, or choose to go way out there in hysteria. And the theme of how can distress bring up a good thing? How can a bad situation, a reversal, bring up a good thing? Krishangi, one of our Zoomers, she sliced that apart in a moment. She shared about a personal experience that was so devastating. We apparently, in the material realm, so devastating, a lot of us can't even fathom it. But at age 23, she had both her legs amputated. If you were on yesterday's show, she was very, genuine and forthright and vulnerable, and shared that with us. And she said she used the Bhagavad Gita as a guide to bring her through that. And now she's like incredible, stellar in the way she lives and moves, so to speak, in this world. She bike rides all around Europe, all around America with her husband. And she's, very focused. She's creative. She's like, she's one of these high functioning individuals that impress me so much. And today maybe we could tell Jiva's story too, Kaustubha. It's something about hearing people's personal story about how they overcame some big reversal in their life that makes you understand that we're supposed to grow in this world. Am I going to grow if everything is easy for me? Is that going to make me grow? And what am I doing here anyway? Am I just supposed to be here like, wee, this is life, it's great, everything's great? According to our philosophy, we're here to grow. We're not just here for sense enjoyment. We're here to learn lessons. Prabhu? Please share.
No, I'm appreciating everything you're saying. I'm just wondering because it seems like what you would like to focus on today, and that's fine, is like how we respond to the current circumstances that we're in. And that's great. I had prepared myself.
You have prepared
for the
yourself.
Philosophical question of how we deal with the problem of evil, and not that they're unrelated, but I don't want us to be competing on the topic. So I'm happy to go whichever way you prefer to go.
The topic of evil. Okay. Because that point was brought up 2 days ago. Why do bad things happen to good people? Is that we're bringing to evil instead of just reversals?
Well, I think all day we talked the last show as well. That was kind of the theme, but certainly they're related.
Sure.
And so I was kind of prepared to go that way, but I'm prepared to go any way you wanted to go, Raghunath.
Here's the deal: you can freeze frame your thoughts if I'm dragging it one way. It's still relevant, but then we could just explore that. I think I'm just sharing my own personal realization from Monday morning in a small town in upstate New York that looks abandoned now. Normal, it's 5:30 a.m. and it will look abandoned all day.
Yeah.
And I got a feeling
Okay.
New Yorkers are going to see things quite different today compared to any other day this year.
All right, so I get it, and I think in one sense the two tie together. So let's just step forward, right? Now we're dealing with this prayer of Kunti. She's praying for calamity, which is a very unusual type of prayer. Generally, people are praying to stop the calamities.
Yeah, give me peace.
Yeah, and she's saying, no, let the calamities, bring them on, because that when I'm in that calamity, my observation has been that I feel a profound sense of connection to the divine. I feel a profound sense of connection to God. I feel a profound sense of reality set in, and I want more of that. Now, in the commentary, Srila Prabhupada, he writes, the duty of a sane person, therefore, is to be undisturbed by worldly calamities, which are sure to happen in all circumstances. Okay. Now that just that sentence right there, it's coming from a different perspective. And to me, whether we're talking about the law of karma or the problem of evil or how we're meant to respond, how a yogi responds to this kind of thing, it has to do with a difference of perspective. And the word perspective, if we think about it in just like in terms of like physics, or in terms of what's the word I'm looking for? Like, like if you're drawing perspective, like on a two-dimensional, on a piece of paper, there's the concept of how you deal with perspective.
Distance.
Yeah. How something looks from one angle, than how it looks from another angle.
Like a photographer.
Yeah. And the idea is that reading Bhagavatam, hearing from great souls, and then taking that and engaging in a process of contemplation, that we can begin to see things from a different perspective, from a different angle. And the yogi or the sadhu, or the wise one, that they're moving through the world with this different perspective. And therefore they're responding to the calamities, which are, as was mentioned here, they're unavoidable. They're sure to happen. They're viewing them from a different perspective. It's a perspective that says, the very limited ground zero perspective that's full of anxiety is what happened to my stability. The world was stable. Now it appears that it is no longer stable, and a type of suffering may, come now that I'm not prepared to handle, that I fear. Whereas the other perspective is, it says, even as I'm moving through the stability, I know the stability is temporary. And as I'm moving through the calamity, I know the calamity is temporary. But I always feel a sense of protection. Often Srila Prabhupada would say like this. He would say that the way that the yogi thinks is that the birds, they're getting their food, right? And the animals in the forest, they're getting, somehow we're all being provided for. And I know I'll be provided for. And if for some reason I feel like I'm not being provided for at some moment, that comes and goes. And that's where the law of karma comes in, that I may suffer something in this life. I embrace the idea that was due to some choices that I've made. I'll endure that suffering and I'll move through it. And I'll see that the world moves through waves. They go up, they go down, they go up, they go down. There's one verse Beautiful verse, poetically beautiful, but so worthy of our contemplation is the invocation to the Isopanisad. You know that one, Raghu? Hot seat? I know you know it.
Om Purnamidam Purnamid. That one?
That's the one. Om Purnam Adaha Purnamidam.
Yeah.
Purnat Purnam Udachyate. Purnasya Purnam Adhaya.
Never learned that one, truthfully.
Really? Oh, I thought
Never learned it.
But it's on your favorite record.
If you want an honest truth, I never even read that book.
But it's really? Oh man.
I don't know. I didn't get into it.
You got some Upanishad
I got
version.
some Upanishad version, if you want the
What's
truth.
with that?
The only Upanishad I like is the Gita Upanishad.
Okay. But it's on your favorite record. It's on that Radha Krishna temple record. Om
I know.
Purnam
That's how I know it the
Adham.
most. I was trying to sing that song when you put me on the hot seat, like Om Purnamidam Purnamidam.
So Om Purnam Adha. Purna means whole or complete. So that word is, in this verse it's 1, 2, 3, 4. It's about 8 times it's used. So Om Purnam Adaha Purnamidam. Purnat Purnam Udachyate. Purnasya Purnam Adaya. Purnam Eva Vashishyate. There's the repetition of the word Purnam or whole. And Prabhupada actually in his commentary, he kind of keeps that repetition going. He kind of plays with that alliteration. But the translation is that the personality of Godhead is perfect and complete. And because he is completely perfect, all emanations from him, such as this phenomenal world, are perfectly equipped as complete wholes. We may be feeling things are incomplete. It's actually perfect. What's happening right now is perfect. It's a
Right.
perfect design. That's the faith. That's the perspective of the wise one. Whatever is produced of the complete whole is also complete in itself, because he is the complete whole. Even though so many complete units emanate from him, he remains the complete balance. But I want to focus on the part of the commentary where Prabhupada is speaking about how we can see this world, that we can have a perspective where we see, yes, coronavirus was meant to happen. Yes, we're meant to grow from it. Yes, it's not that things are falling apart. From our vision, it seems like, oh my God, things are falling apart. But actually, a wiser person is saying everything is, there may be pain coming, there may be suffering coming. It's probably not as great as we fear. But sometimes things come that are, where the tragedy increases way beyond what we're expecting. That's a possibility too. In either case, I feel a sense of stability because I feel connected to God, as Kunti's praying for. So here's part of Prabhupada's commentary. He says, all facilities are given to the small, complete units. He's playing with this completeness, that the world is complete, that God is complete, that everything that emanates from God, that includes us, which he here calls the small, complete units, as well as the world, that they're all perfectly complete. So he says, all facilities are given to the small, complete units, namely the living beings, to enable them to realize the complete whole. In other words, whatever is happening in this world is there to serve our realization of the complete whole or of God. All forms of incompleteness are experienced due to incomplete knowledge of the complete whole. If I'm in fear because of this coronavirus, it means my perspective is not complete. Right? The human form of life is a complete manifestation of the consciousness of the living being. All right, we've come to a level where our consciousness is capable of grasping why this is all happening, why I'm in this world, why am I suffering, etc. He goes on to say, because we do not know that there's a complete arrangement in nature for our maintenance, we make efforts to utilize the resources of nature to create a so-called complete life of sense enjoyment. Right? I don't trust that I'm being provided for, so I'm making all kinds of strategies to find some complete happiness. Because a living entity cannot enjoy the life of the senses without being dovetailed with the complete whole, the misleading life of sense enjoyment is illusion. Right? I'm only finding complete happiness when I'm connected to the complete whole. The hand of a body is a complete unit only as long as it is attached to the complete body.
It's a great analogy.
Right? When the hand is severed from the body, it may appear like a hand, but it actually has none of the potencies of a hand.
There's no use.
It has no use. Similarly, living beings are part and parcel of the complete whole. And if they are severed from the complete whole, the illusory representation of the completeness cannot fully satisfy them.
Can I just chime in on that? That's
Please.
such a good analogy.
Yeah.
And Prabhupada used it a very similar way. We find our service, we find our position, our joy, our connection by serving the whole. So the hand serves the mouth. It picks a fruit, puts it in the mouth, the whole body is nourished, and the hand is also nourished.
Yeah.
But when that hand is severed, it's the same hand. It could even be very beautifully decorated with jewels. But once it's severed, like for example, we walk in to do our class this morning, and I see a very beautiful yet severed hand in the middle of the yoga studio. That same thing that had use, that had beauty. Some people even say, some people are hand models. Do you know that? You can be a hand model.
George Costanza was one, I believe.
That's yeah. So the hand model, even if you were to sever that hand, even that very attractive hand with very beautiful rings on it, it would be gruesome. It would be hideous. When we are disconnected from the whole, even if we are beautiful or quite decorated, we become horrible, horrific. Our beauty lies in connection through service, not in seeing myself as independent from something greater.
He goes on, similar to you're saying. Similarly, he uses that analogy of the hand. He says, similarly, living beings are part and parcel of the complete whole of God. And if they are severed from the complete whole, the illusory representation of completeness cannot fully satisfy them. Now, every phrase in these sentences, the illusory representation of completeness. We've been living, Americans in particular, live.
Americans.
Those lousy Americans, right? We've been living in an illusory representation of completeness. And now it's getting shaken a little bit. That our faith in that is getting shaken a little bit, right? Our stability is being shown that, hey, maybe our material arrangements are not as stable as we always thought they were. We had assumed that we were going to pass through life without any super major, big-time calamity like this striking us. And now we're all making fools of ourselves, running around buying toilet paper like the world's coming to an end.
We've been to India. We don't need toilet paper. We know
That's
the
right.
deal.
So again, he says, similarly, living beings are part and parcel of the complete whole. That's where we'll find our stability. And if they are severed from the complete whole, the illusory representation of completeness cannot satisfy them. It may satisfy us for some time, and then it changes because that's the nature of matter. It's like this one moment, and it changes the next. The completeness of human life can be realized only when one engages in the service of the complete whole. All services in this world, whether social, political, communal, international, or even interplanetary, will remain incomplete.
Like
Yeah, let's throw that in there. Well, they will remain incomplete until they're dovetailed with the complete whole. When everything is dovetailed with the complete whole, the attached parts and parcels also become complete in themselves. We'll feel a sense of completeness if we're connected to God, even when the material calamity is going on. And that's what Kunti is experiencing. She experiences it even more profoundly when the material stuff starts to fall apart. Right? And she feels a sense of stability being connected to God.
I think would be a good time to bring in Jiva's story. Do you have that up on your?
I could pull it up.
While you look for that, let me just preempt it. Is that okay? I just don't have easily access to it. The conversation was brought up the other day in class how, why would a loving God create so much stress, so many reversals, so much potential tragedy? Why must your nose be ground to the gutter if there is a loving, compassionate God? And it created so much interest, or sparked a lot of conversation. And then one of our students, who I think is not on the show right now, but she wanted us to read it, or we asked her permission to reread it. She wanted to challenge that statement. She wanted to challenge the statement and say, no, actually, there is love in great misfortune. Do you have that up, Prabhu?
I do. Shall I read it?
Yeah, please.
So she started by saying, I thrive on discussions like these. And she said, I just want to say that I was a drug addict, street living prostitute. Only a spiritual experience, in my case, a spiritual 2x4, was the turning point. Only then, with utter disparity, as only the dying can have.
If you don't know what a 2x4 is, because sometimes people are not American, so we use these words. It's like a big wooden beam. So a spiritual 2x4 means she's being hit by this big wooden beam in the head. But she's saying it's a spiritual hit in the head.
And it became a turning point. Only then, with utter disparity, as only the dying can have, was I able to experience that shift. The question of karma, the question that brought it up, of if you ask a person if she would rather not have that rape or hideous thing happen to them, etc., I would say this from my own experience. Of course, I would rather have the fruits of God and deep understanding of Krishna's mercy without all the suffering. But if all that suffering is the footwork to the thresholds of my deep love for God, then I would say I would not trade that for anything. All I know is that everything happened the way it did, and I would rather accept and move forward with gratitude than spend too much time speculating on ifs and whens. And then she shares, fear is a lack of faith. Courage is fear that has said its prayers. The moment of surrender, the moment I gave my pain, ugliness, compulsions, and will over to God was for me was like the moment in The Wizard of Oz when everything went from black and white to multicolored. I am so fortunate and did nothing to deserve it, nothing. Now practicing that mood on a daily basis is the footwork.
Incredible.
It is. It's a very deep realization that, and Jiva's an old friend of mine. We go way, way back. Louis, he goes way, way back with Jiva. She and I have, we were friends when we were kids. We were friends when she was 13 and I was 15 years old. And then when I became a monk, when I was 21, I didn't see her for over 30 years. And so while I was in India and with you and learning these mantras and studying this philosophy and practicing bhakti, she was going through a lot of what we just read. And I hadn't seen her for like 30 years. And then we reconnected on Facebook. And for some years, 3 or 4 years or something like that, we had an occasional, we shared something occasionally on
social media or something.
On social media, but we hadn't really reconnected in a substantial way. And then at one point she wrote to me saying that she had begun practicing yoga and reading Bhagavad Gita. She had met some devotees, some Bhakti-yogis, and it was changing her whole life. It was changing her whole perspective. And then we reconnected and we began to talk. And when we first connected, we had like a Skype call, and she immediately was breaking into tears and saying, I don't know exactly what's happening to me, but I just feel, she says it's somehow beautiful and scary at the same time, but I feel like I just want to live entirely for God. And not everybody understands me, which was it. And then many times I'd hear her express things that were like, it was almost sounding like prayers coming straight out of Bhagavatam. And I expressed this to Raghunath Swami. I said, she's in one sense relatively new to this, but I hear these profound realizations come from her. And he said that the 12 steps, you know, the 12-step programs, they go very deep. It's actually a very real type of spiritual progress that one makes through that one can make through that. And it was that and other experiences in my recent life have really illustrated to me how the sufferings that we go through in life, the challenges, the pleasures and the pains together, how if we can add some spiritual knowledge to that all that experience becomes very valuable. It's like Prabhupada would say, it's a lot of zeros, but if you put a one before those zeros, suddenly they have tremendous value. And the wisdom that's shared through the Bhakti tradition, if it's connected to our life experience, and in particular the suffering, then all that suffering becomes very valuable. And as she's saying here, even though it was a very deep level of suffering, if that's what it took.
A lot of us can't even imagine it. Mara, sorry to bring Mara into this. Just thinking, like, we can't even imagine this type of like pain that people have gone through. Just, you've read it sort of like almost nonchalantly, that every day was a type of torturous pain.
Yeah. You know, so she was saying I wouldn't trade all that torturous pain if that's what it took to get me here.
Mm.
Now I pulled something up. Have you ever read the book Siddharta?
Years ago.
Okay.
Back when I used to read things besides the Srimad Bhagavatam.
So, you know, I find that that Hermann Hesse is a super brilliant writer. And I found Siddharta to be a brilliant book. I find he has a poetic way of expressing a lot in a concise way. And it's not that I agree with all the conclusions of the book or agree with, in a sense, the process that he lays out in the book, which kind of like, you know, Siddhartha's enlightenment comes by diving into debauchery, experiencing it deeply, and then, you know, ultimately all his realizations, you know, are derived from, you know, staring into the river.
Mm.
But there's something to it that I think is, there's something valuable to be shared. And I thought maybe I could read a little bit.
Please.
But it has to do with the idea that we need to get to truth, to understand karma, to understand why there is suffering in this world, to begin to see good and bad as almost non-different. It requires a lot of contemplation. It requires hearing and contemplating and being able to expand our mind. And that's where truth comes. It's not going to come on our superficial surface level. It's going to come through a very deep level of thought that Bhagavatam is meant to bring us to. So the parts that I wanted to read, it describes that Siddhartha, who was in his youth, he was kind of a very impressive Brahmana boy. And then he, along with his friend named Govinda, he joined these hardcore ascetics.
Not hardcore, but
okay. These very serious ascetics. Lived with them, mastered their techniques, went on, met the Buddha himself. But he, whereas his friend Govinda joined Buddha and kind of studied under his tutelage, following the rules, etc., Siddhartha had some intuition to leave the rules behind and try to find truth on his own. A theme in the book is that truth can't be given from one person to another. It has to be experienced on one's own, which I agree and disagree with. You know, I think there's two ways of looking at it. Then he, you know, becomes involved with, you know, learns the ways of love from the prostitute Kamala. dives into the business world, becomes, degraded in life, loses taste for that degraded life, and then kind of begins to wander again aimlessly in a state of depression. And then he meets a man, the ferryman, who just like, he's a very simple man that just ferries people across the river, but he's a purely realized soul. And that man kind of shows him the techniques of learning truths by staring into the nature, into the river in particular. Later, he meets his ex Kamala, and as he meets her, she dies, and their child, which he didn't know that he had, now is living with him, and he suffers a lot because that son is very difficult for him to connect with or share anything with. And so what I'm reading now is after he tries to go find his son again, and he realizes that it's not going to work, that his son is gone. He's suffering because of his lack of connection to his son. He realizes that I did the same thing to my father when I went off and joined the ascetics. And now we're going to read about how he learns through staring into this river, guided by his guru. But why I want to bring it up is because it's like, let's look at the world from a totally different perspective and see that happiness and distress in this world, it's almost one thing.
Mm.
The good and the bad is just one thing from a higher perspective. And we're meant to see it all from a distance and let it all go. All right, so let me just read a little bit of it and see where it goes. I'm interested to hear your thoughts, Raghu, on this.
Sure. Is it okay if we go 5 minutes over today? Because
we started late, yeah.
Is that all right?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay with you, Mara? You're going to work today, Mara? Everything's canceled. You know what she does? She goes in, she makes me this mushroom drink. That's her work.
So his guru, the ferryman, his name is Vasudeva. And so Vasudeva, he just shared with Vasudeva how he had looked into the river and realized that the suffering that he's feeling from the lack of connection to his own son, that he created that for his own father. He's looking and he's seeing his reflection. He's looking, my face looks like my father. It occurs to him. And in that he realizes, I caused my father suffering the same way my son is causing me suffering. That this world is just a cycle and a cycle and a cycle. And we keep going round and round and round, searching for happiness, caught in these cycles. I caused my father suffering. My son is now causing my suffering. And we go around and around, always searching for happiness, searching for a goal. And the cycle of happiness and distress just moves on and on and on. So Vasudeva realizes that he's getting it now. He's getting deep realization now. So it says, when he had finished sharing all this with Vasudeva, Vasudeva fixed his kind and now somewhat feeble gaze upon him without speaking, silently radiating love and gaiety in his direction, understanding and knowledge. He took Siddhartha's hand, led him to their seat on the riverbank, sat down there with him and smiled at the river. He said, "You have heard the river laugh," he said, "but you have not heard everything. Listen, let us listen, and you will hear more." They listened. Gently, the many-voiced song of the river rang out. Siddhartha gazed into the streaming water. And I just want to share here, in a sense, what's being said here is, if we look at life, if we step back and look at life, look at coronavirus, not like, oh my God, what's going to happen? But like, why does this happen? Why do these things happen again and again? So they listened gently. The many-voiced song of the river rang out. Siddhartha gazed into the streaming water, and in the water, images appeared to him. His father appeared, lonely, mourning for his son. He himself appeared, lonely, and also bound to his distant son with the bands of longing. His son appeared, himself lonely, the boy eagerly storming down the flaming path of his young desires, each one with his sights set on his own goal, each one possessed by his goal, each one suffering. The river sang with a voice of sorrow. It sang longing, and longingly it flowed on towards its goal, its voice a lament. Okay. Now I'm going to skip forward a little bit. And he says, Siddhartha listened. He was now completely and utterly immersed in his listening, utterly empty, utterly receptive. He felt he had now succeeded in learning how to listen. So if we really want to look into life and understand what it's all about, we have to become empty of our conditioning. We have to be able to let go of the what's going to make me happy and what's not going to make me happy right now, and step back and try to look at the world from another perspective. So it says he's utterly empty, utterly receptive. He felt he had now succeeded in learning how to listen. He had heard all these things often now, these many voices in the river. Today it sounded new, right? We should be able to look at the sufferings in life, the happiness and the distress, and try to see it in a new way, in a deeper way. Already he could no longer distinguish the many voices, could not distinguish the gay from the weeping, the childish from the virile. They all belonged together. The yearning laments and the wise man's laughter, the cry of anger and the moans of the dying, they were all one, all of them interlinked and interwoven, bound together in 1,000 ways. You often use this analogy of a tapestry, you know? Mm. And all of this together, all the voices, all the goals, all the longing, all the suffering, all the pleasure, everything good and everything bad, all of it together was the world. All of it together was the river of occurrences, the music of life. And when Siddhartha listened attentively to this river, to this 1,000-voice song, when he listened neither for the sorrow nor for the laughter, when he did not attach his soul, this is real important, I'm going to read this whole sentence again.
Okay.
And when Siddhartha listened attentively to this river, when we're attentive to what's happening in life, to this 1,000-voice song, when he listened neither for the sorrow nor for the laughter, when he did not attach his soul to any one voice and enter into it with his ego, but rather heard all of them, heard the whole, the oneness, then the great song of the 1,000 voices consisted only of a single word, Om, perfection. Right? And to me, that goes right back to Om Purnam Adaham Purnamidam, right? That ultimately this whole thing is in one sense of a phantasmagoria, but it's a directed one. It's a complete one that's meant to help us detach ourselves from it and experiencing something that's way beyond it. But as long as we attach our soul to one of these voices in this world, or one of these bodies in this world, one of these egos in the world, one of these identities in the world, and become caught up with the idea of where will I find my enjoyment and how will I avoid my suffering, that perspective is very distant from us. We have to come to the point where we go within, where we have the faith to say that I believe that happiness is my nature. It's not something that I have to adjust the material world to experience. And once I have that faith, then I'm going to begin to observe the pleasures and the miseries of this world a bit from a distance, a little bit from a distance. Now, that doesn't mean that we're going to become callous to suffering in this world, because we're going to find so many instructions in the Gita and the Bhagavatam that show that our way of deepening this realization will come through relieving the sufferings of others. But it does mean that we're able to look at our own suffering and the suffering of others and see the happiness and the stress as one, right? Bhogatyaga, that we're enjoying, and then we lose what we get something that's pleasurable, we lose something that's pleasurable. That's the way the material world works. And then from that perspective, we can begin to say, from a detached point of view, we can begin to understand really what it's all about and connect ourselves in a profound way.
As big as the yoga has gotten in the United States and Europe, this is the secret teaching. Can I find some peace of mind, past the pleasure and past the pain? Can I find some centeredness, some groundedness? And the asanas help. If you go in with that perspective, if you don't go into, I'm doing this for my fitness, if you go into, can I find some evenness, some sama, some samadhi, some sameness in between pleasure and pain? Reading helps, hearing helps. All this stuff is supposed to help. It's all meant to prepare our consciousness for situations exactly what we're going through right now. And we're asked to sort of stand up tall. We're all being challenged. And we're going to say, what's your choice going to be today? And we get asked that choice perhaps not every day, but maybe every moment. What's your choice going to be now? And now. And that, how about in this situation? And how about this struggle is going to happen? And this is to your career, and this with your kids, and this, I got to homeschool, but I don't have childcare, and right? These are big things that people are going to go through, and we're asked to stand up tall. All this stuff we've been working on, we're asked to put it to practice immediately. It's not going to exist theoretically. It's going to be, we're asked to not just stand up tall, but you will be raised up tall. To the degree that we apply it, we're going to be able to fly high in our spiritual life. What's going on here is an incredible opportunity for our spiritual evolution. It's like a superfood. Instead of eating this big thing of salad, you're going to take a little bit of this superfood. This green algae is going to have all the vitamins and nutrients of that gigantic salad you're about to eat. So we are asked to grow up real quick. And I think some of us have had experiences where we are said, you're about to grow up real quick. I can see in my own life when I got married, I never had a job. I just was in a band. I never did anything. I never had any worries in the world. I married a lady. We had 2 little children. And I got, oh my God, I got to raise these kids. I got to learn how to be a father. I got to learn how to, I wanted to change my career. I got to figure out how to make a regular living. I got to figure out how to show up for these kids, even when I don't feel like showing up. So sometimes we're asked to grow up in a big way. And I think in a spiritual way, this is a huge opportunity for us to take all these books on our shelves. Everybody here, I'm sure, can look back on their bookshelf and find a spiritual book, whether it's Hermann Hesse or the Bhagavad Gita or the Essene Gospel of Jesus, whatever it is, there's a spiritual book on your bookshelf, if not millions of them. Now's the time that they're not just going to exist in the cloud, so to speak, but they have to exist within our heart, and we have to put them to practice. We don't give a crap about your robe. It's a beautiful robe. We don't give a crap about your accoutrements of spirituality. My books, my spiritual library. Now's a chance. How am I going to put this stuff to real, genuine practice? And we're getting called to do it, and it's going to hurt, and we're going to sort of break ourselves, and we're going to stumble, and we're going to have a panic attack or 2 or 3. But this is why we have a sangha. This is why we have a group to sort of gather us together and to bring us forward. And when I'm feeling weak, Kaustubha grabs me by the wrist. If he feels weak, I grab him by the wrist. And that's what a sangha does. We move forward together as a group. And when someone trips, you lift that person up with you. And it's very easy to break a little twig. Very difficult to break 100 twigs. And that's the power of community. All this talk of community, this is a chance to have real community. But it's not community just to have like some party. It's a community to bring us higher, to a higher place of realization, to practice what we've been reading and studying on a regular basis. A lot of us are yoga teachers. Now's a chance to be real, apply this yoga stuff. Now's the chance. Some of us have lived in ashrams. Now's the time to apply all that stuff. It's actually the most beautiful place we could be in right now. Otherwise, it's just existing in my frontal lobes, just floating around here. Yeah, spiritual. Yeah, transcendence. Yeah, detachment. Yeah. Now I put it to practice. And everybody here, I mean, it's quite beautiful. We're making this up. Look, we even have more people. Kaustubha,
Raghuji.
at that time. Thank you guys, everybody. Thanks for everybody joining us. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, hey, give us a 5-star rating. It helps us get the word out to more people, believe it or not. That's the best way you can serve us. You go to Apple Podcasts, leave a 5-star, tell the world that you're getting something out of this show. Also, if you want to join us on our Patreon account, we've got lots of resources there. And you know, it's become the new Netflix. That's what's going on. It's become the new Netflix, our Patreon account. You go there, Sophie Morgan posted, this is what I'm doing on Friday night. I'm watching whatever, Krishna book. This is what you can do with our time. There's no more downtime where I'm going to gauge my downtime with a bunch of nonsense. I want to put it towards something high. And this is our testing ground. A day off from work doesn't mean a day off for Maya. It means this is your chance to go deeper into yourself. What a blessing. This is our blessing. Anyway, thanks to everybody. Join us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. Leave comments on YouTube. And those who join us late on the show on Zoom, thanks for everybody. Yes, Amy Steller is already dancing around the kitchen. Turn this up. I got to dance, please. There we go. Jai Shri Krishna. By the way, I'm watching. If you're not clapping your hands right now, there's something very, very wrong here. We're going to take back your Zoom code. There you go, Alex. Come on. I'm like Santa Claus. I'm checking my list. I'm checking it twice. Oh, the baby's dancing. Baby Bodhi's dancing. There's some blackouts today, and there's some froze faces I'm seeing. Oh, Alexander Class said you froze your face so I couldn't see you. Jai Shri Krishna Bolo Jai Ram.